So it's my pleasure to introduce to you today my peer, my collaborator, my friend, I would say, Kriss Baird from Catalyst. So Kriss, we've been in a number of talks already regularly, so it's a pleasure to have you here and to let others also enjoy the conversations that we more often have. But first, let me introduce you properly. So Kriss has a huge background, so we had to take some care to make it easily readable. And if you read through the background of Kriss, it's immediately clear why, while he's now on the leading team of Catalyst. Kriss has worked on and been immersed in innovation and entrepreneurship during all of his impressive career. First as lead technologist and senior program lead at Innovate UK, where he delivered 25 digital economy innovation funds for the IC Tomorrow program in partnership with the likes of, here it comes, IBM Watson, Google, Mozilla, Sony PlayStation, and Intel, among many others, and funding more than 130 innovative businesses to develop and pilot digital prototypes with blue chip industry leaders. In his following role at University College London's Educate Accelerator, he led program design and delivery for industry-specific venture building, mentoring, and entrepreneurship training for 250 edtech ventures, helping founders to better qualify their market potential and secure finance for growth, funding, and R&D. Over the last 2 years, he has been among those at the steering wheel of Cardano's Catalyst program, leading it from a small-scale grant program to one of the world's largest decentralized innovation funds, with an ever-increasing number of projects and grants being awarded. Wow! Kriss, I'll stop sharing here. Welcome. How are you?
Very good. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for such a warm and generous introduction. As I sort of said to you offline, like the imposter syndrome is real when you put it all like that, and it's yeah. I certainly feel like I'm in the right place with the right group of people and the right space to be creative these days, for sure.
I think with all that experience below your belt and all the things that we didn't put on there, you must be around 80 years old or something.
Well, I guess in crypto years, it probably feels like that. But yeah, half that, thankfully. And yeah, I mean, you know, there's a big wide world out there to try and tackle, right? I'm certainly don't have the experience or background as our illuminous leaders within Charles and Ben, for sure. But you know, I do feel like yeah, I've seen quite a fair bit around the digital economy and innovation and digital transformation of industries over the past 10 to 15 years, for sure.
Yes, and I also always appreciate our talks and being able to share your experience and wisdom and all the learnings from Catalyst with me, so that we can benefit from that in our deep funding program, and I'm very grateful for that. So while Ben and Charles have their own fireside chat, I suppose we'll have our own smaller version on that, but then focus more on Cardano Catalyst and maybe mirroring it a little bit now and then against this small scale initiative called deep funding. So what I would be interested in when I read your bio, Kriss, and we should maybe go deeper into that a little bit later, is how you experience the difference in being in a traditional accelerator versus blockchain decentralized accelerator. I think that would be very interesting to have a view on that. But before we do that, I would like to take one step back and ask you, well, first of all, let's start with the moment that you onboarded Catalyst. How was Catalyst when you started here? Because I think it was already started when you onboarded, right?
Yeah, that's right. So the quick whistle stop tour of that was, I've been quite honestly a Cardano fan from quite literally day one. You can't even find the YouTube videos that I'd first seen around Agalos and his research team looking at random number generators and the potential for blockchain technology to improve online gaming systems like gambling and casinos and whatnot. This is, as I said before, the IOHK YouTube channel. So I was plugged in very, very early and sort of saw the potential for this protocol and this team and, everything that's kind of come since. And so when Dor, who was speaking earlier, my illustrious colleague or former co-worker and peer and friend, when he launched and announced and launched Catalyst at Summit 2020, Cardano Summit 2020, it immediately piqued my interest because, I would say that, for the previous 2 or 3 years following leaving Innovate UK, I'd gone on to set up and work closely with another big grants agency organization called UFI, VocTech Trust, that was providing grants for tech for good. And then after that, establishing UCL's EdTech Accelerator, Educate. You could just sort of see some of the challenges that early stage R&D and innovators were having, and amid the backdrop of what was then a boom and a bust of the crypto market to some extent, there was a drying up of resources and availability of opportunities for early stage innovators and creators to kind of get started. And as I said, I'd kind of been coming at this from a position of understanding the blockchain space really well, as far as I believe anyway, for the past few years, seeing that there was these opportunities to kind of growth hack legacy systems and take disruptive approaches to this. And I certainly believe that there's a real value in the power of the crowd, and then being able to kind of come to these sort of collective understandings and sort of shared states of wisdom to make better decisions. And I think arguably the majority of people that come to crypto will certainly dive right in and don't just look at it as an investment vehicle or a savings plan, are there because they want to see change to legacy traditional systems. And I guess my background and experience was no different. I mean, to sort of draw some parallels or comparisons to the traditional world. I mean, what we see within startup financing just generally is that it's startup funding is really unevenly distributed, and it's often locked behind really high or impenetrable walls. And whether it's grant funding, you need to have a PhD or a patent or something else, or come from a university background to really motivate the really small number of people making those decisions. Quite literally, sometimes 3 to 5 professional experts, assessors, who often like to play God and don't see the merits in creating.
Were you one of those gods in those organizations?
I mean, I've had the fortitude of being sitting with sort of God admin system status, right? But not being one of those assessors for Innovate UK. Like, I was running programs for them and designing that, and then training assessors and all this stuff. And then, for other grant agencies and organizations, I have done assessments, but I kind of take a very empathetic approach, because I really know what it's like at the spiky end of innovation, and startup life is really tough, and you really need to get people to believe. You need chances and opportunities. So with that in mind, when you look at, say, how its decisions are made in traditional grant organizations or, you know, public funding organizations, it's really limited to just, you know, a handful of people. And they, you know, have the casting vote on whether a project lives or dies. And then, you know, when you look at accelerators and seed funding and venture capital, well, all of those guys and girls want traction. They want to see product market fit. They want to see revenues and returns and really clear trajectories of growth. And again, you know, in such a nascent space, or, you know, dare I say, an immature industry, you know, particularly when people are trying to still figure out what the business models are for the industry, let alone the businesses that are building on top of it, then, you know, it's been difficult. And obviously we saw with the ICO phase and Mania, there's some challenges there, and maybe that's not the right model to accelerate and incubate good ideas and early stage businesses. And so, as I said, bringing this right round to then Summit 2020, when Dor and Charles essentially launched Project Catalyst, it just seemed serendipitous to my ambitions and ideas around where we could be going over the next sort of 5 to 10 years. And so then, you know, to come bring around to your question around, you know, how was Catalyst then? What was it like when we first started? And, you know, how can I sort of see it now? I mean, really, I think from day one, what was always really impressive was just that that desire and that rapid growth development of the knowledge capital that sits within the community. Like, everybody was so hungry to learn on how to participate, what, you know, this idea of decentralized governance and centralized decision making means for innovation funding, what constitutes as a good idea and a good proposal. All of these things started coming to the fold really, really quickly. And then what's really, really impressed me is the number of projects that have really delivered on their promises, and the diversity ideas, the regionality, and ultimately the conviction of the community of a broadly large group of strangers coming together to sort of share ideas in a fairly safe space, with an ambition to solve real world problems. All of that blows my mind.
I was muted. I think the core question behind this in the end is, do a large group of people that don't know each other and start to collaborate with each other, in the end, do you think they make better decisions than the 4 or 5 gods do in the older situation?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really, really great question. And I think the safest way to answer that is no one knows yet. Don't have enough data to be able to say whether or not it produces better outcomes. What I will say is that, you know, you can certainly put in structures and processes and approaches that give enough freedom for people to experiment without sort of fear of retribution, I believe. And as Dor was saying in his talk, there's a lot of pragmatic reality with a lot of this stuff, that sure, there's going to be, in these early stage startup arenas, many ideas that, you know, don't become unicorns or billion-dollar ideas or go on to have longevity and develop traction, and that's okay, right? Because there is always learning to be done, whether or not a project is deemed, you know, subjectively successful or not, right? By whatever subjective success metrics you want to place on the project. And a proposal that gets voted on maybe 3 to 6 months before the project's even initiated, and maybe 12 or 18 or 24 months before it completes, right? What can you know as a voter or as a reviewer of those proposals, an evaluator? What can you really feasibly, and even as a proposer, what can you, you know, be confident of in such an early stage space, when you don't know the trials and challenges that you're going to face whilst being in the midst of the delivery?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess it's a journey from multiple angles, right? So it's a journey in the case that these projects have to prove themselves in an evolving ecosystem, being an evolving product. So that's one insecurity. And the other one is that also the processes that we're building for voting and decision making and making the good projects flow to the top also have to mature. So I agree with you also that it would be a little bit lame to say, well, there haven't been 10 unicorns yet, so it sucks. Because we're at the first step yet, and we have to see and we have to improve. It's like people saying, well, Bitcoin doesn't work because it's too volatile or because it's not fast enough. Yes, people, we're early stages here. And it's very interesting that some people always judge a new innovation based on what it does now in their current old situation, and that other people judge new technology based on what it could be and what it could become. And
yeah, I love the analogy. I love the analogy that an overnight success was 10 years in the making, right? And I think it's important to recognize and acknowledge in the crypto space, too many of us are focused on the short-term timeframes, the 5-minute chart or the 15-minute chart, right? But genuine innovation really does take, it's not even days and weeks and months, it's months and years, sometimes decades. If we apply that to the context of AI or even AGI, right? How long has Ben been doing what he's been doing? How long has how long has this idea of the singularity been around? Well, it's been around for a long, long time, and we're not there yet. So why should we expect products to have maturity in such short time frames? And we can apply that to Catalyst and deep funding and ZK Ignite, which Door's involved with today. Like, why should we expect these to be fully mature, fully iterated, validated, proven models and modes and products and systems when there's so much added complexity to it? I often used to say it takes a couple of years for these sorts of programs to run like a well-oiled machine. And that was when there was just the program team and there was just the startups. When you add into the complexity of thousands or tens of thousands of people collaborating all around the world to make decisions and producing the amount of proposals and ultimately projects, and then those that are participating in Catalyst that are wanting to contribute to the evolution and iteration of the processes and the governance and structures that sort of underpin Catalyst. I would argue that it's going to take longer than 2 years for that to get ironed out, just to take the training wheels off, let alone for it to be a well-oiled machine.
Yeah, well, that sets some expectations. At least, I'm very happy to be in the part of the people that believe in progress and see the opportunity, and not see only the problems that we have today, but see the opportunity that it will have for tomorrow. And in that sense, our communities are completely the same. But going back from that layer of abstraction a little bit more into the nitty-gritty, everyday work, can you describe what happened when you came from a more incubator, entrepreneurial, educational background into Catalyst? What did you expect before your first working day, and what did you encounter?
Yeah, well, it was interesting. I was very aware of the Treasury Systems paper by Bingsheng Zhang and Roman Olinikov, who are part of our research team at IO. And so it was interesting. I remember one of the first conversations that Dora and I had as co-workers, and I was like, oh, so how different is the research paper to the implementation? And he chuckled. And he was like, yeah, it's quite wildly different. I mean, most of the primitives are still the same. Like we have the side chain, Jormungandr, which is a hybrid of Ouroboros and the account state model, but ultimately it is the Ouroboros protocol or consensus mechanism, and then we had this, within the Treasury paper, this idea of delegate representatives and liquid democracy, and this idea of sort of committee keys that would get circulated after the tallies have concluded, and we don't have those last two components just yet, and there's a strong plan and vision and a roadmap in place to address those things and bring about liquid democracy. Obviously, we're seeing that coming about through the age of Voltaire, and I'd like to see that come to Catalyst as well fairly soon. So there was a balance to be made between what I understood of the research and what was able to have been implemented in the time. But then, quite soon on into me joining the team, we deployed essentially privacy preserving votes and voting. So I'm super proud of that. I believe we're one of, if not the first, voting protocol to have privacy preserving qualities, and that persists today. So yeah, that was, I think, my first expectations, is just what's been able to be delivered in the time, and what the research paper was aiming to achieve.
But that's a very interesting point that you're just mentioning, privacy preserving votes. I think we will run into similar questions, but then also related to our reputation program. And the question is, do you want to know of people that are active on the portal, what their voting behavior is? Should it be traceable, yes or no? Should you know if somebody makes certain remarks, whether they have, what their token balance is?
Mm-hmm.
Should it matter? Should it be transparent? So it's transparency versus privacy. And I think we will be having some interesting discussions around that. Was that similar at Catalyst?
I mean, I think there was always an ambition to introduce privacy preserving voting because of the.
Can we perhaps on room one switch to the right back screen?
Probably because of the
Perfect.
the ambition and the intention to make quite a large impact in terms of how much funding we would ideally like to distribute through these rounds in a reasonably short amount of time. I mean, to date, in fact, I've got a quick slide. I think it's maybe just worth me throwing up, if that's all right, Jan.
Yeah, sure. You're able to share if you want.
Let me get it going. Can you see that slide?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah. So I mean, in the top right corner, $48 million worth of ADA has been awarded so far. It's not been fully distributed, but in order to kind of get to that number, we've had to go through some breakneck speed in terms of growth and how many projects ended up getting supported. And because of that sum of money that's now been awarded, and the size of project proposals that have begun to emerge over time, I think it's important that people recognize that there's serious resources that are on the table. And, with serious resources comes, a lot of responsibility. And, certainly from the traditional incubator, or certainly traditional grants background that I've had, you wouldn't want people to know if you're the ones that are making the decisions, because you don't want them to send the boys round to coerce you into going one way or another, And I think that's something that's often overlooked. We have an unreal community, a fabulous community. Catalyst is nothing without the community. It's a testament to everybody's creativity and conviction and motivation to make a real difference, that I think Catalyst has been able to achieve what it's been able to achieve in such a short period of time. But had private voting not been a feature. As I said, my worry is, and has always been, that there is some shenanigans that can take place that we would sort of promote undesirable behaviors.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, especially if people would be identifiable personally, right? Then they would become a potential target for people who want their votes or whatever. And that is not what is desired, of course. The way we're trying to treat is that we want to disclose profiles, but we won't do anything like KYC. So people are represented by their wallet or collection of wallets. And they would be able to build a profile around that, but it wouldn't necessarily be their own profile. And they might even have different profiles on different platforms, I suppose. So yeah, their profile would be visible within the constraints of our platform. So yeah, whether that's a risk or not, yeah, maybe if we are sufficiently grown, there will be communication methods to get in touch with people. So yeah, maybe we still would run into the same issue. So that's an interesting insight. So I'll yeah, continue to think about that.
Yeah, I certainly think that, you know, once we have mature primitives like self-sovereign identity, or something that's able to kind of create a separation between the individual and the actions that they're taking that are on chain, that has a lot of benefits. And then, you know, you and I talk at length about this, like you know, once those sorts of capabilities are mature, the implementation of reputation systems and attribution of reputation or contribution, should I say, is probably more pertinent rather than reputation, becomes, I think, a lot easier to manifest and to realize. But yeah, again, until we've got these identifiers that could be portable and sort of interconnected and interoperable between systems or, you know, communities, like a Catalyst did, and contributions could be applicable to your reputational contribution scores in deep funding. Until we've got a really good handle on how those can be implemented, and we've tested it, there's certainly some unknowns. I mean, that's one of the things that I would love to see. You know, if you were to ask me what we to do if we were to do it all over again, would be to kind of create these sandbox environments, and these test nets, or this capability for people to be able to come and build onto Catalyst, on top of Catalyst, as a sort of sandbox environment, so we can test out these ideas really rapidly and iterate quite quickly, and then work with the community in more of a sort of concerted effort and a far more distributed way of developing out these protocols and systems than we currently do.
Yeah. That's an interesting thought. First, going back to that voting and reputation, my take on this right now is that, yes, it would be good in a portal to know somebody's, well, let's call it contribution score indeed, or rating. But I think the moment that you know that a person with a high contribution rating also is a whale that has a lot of voting power, then you might be running into issues, because there will be ways for me to connect with that person. Mm-hmm. So I would be able to say, listen, if you vote for my project, I will give you this or that, or if you don't do it, I will. Yeah. So that's something, and you don't want to put that temptation on people in the first place. So yeah, that's a valuable insight. Now, related to the sandbox, when I started out with deep funding, I positioned deep funding as the sandbox of Cardano Catalyst. And, you know, when we started thinking about deep funding, the idea was that maybe we would just join Cardano Catalyst and on board on Catalyst. And there were some practical reasons for not doing that related to tokenomics and not being a native token. And so voting would be hard in HIX. But there was also a positive reason. And I figured that if we would have two systems that are separately evolving, and of course, I gratefully and gracefully accept all the learnings that you already have and Catalyst has had over the past years, and being conscious of that. Maybe not always being able to avoid the same issues, but at least being conscious of that. I think there is real value in having multiple systems live next to each other. And I was outlining in a presentation before on deep funding, actually the contribution system that we are aiming to build, which would be liquid in itself, meaning that you could use the contribution score from somebody in Catalyst, for instance. And if that person would be new in deep funding, we could already give him a starting contribution score, because we know he's such a valuable man or woman on Cardano Catalyst. So that way also the contribution score could be liquid across multiple systems and platforms, etc., while every system can still have its own journey of experimentation. And what I like, for instance, is the fact that you are now going to experiment with liquid democracy, while we are experimenting with reputation systems. And I think we both have a long journey to go. I know we have a long journey to go there. But having both things next to each other, and then having these talks like we are doing right now, and being able to share our experience and to talk about it and learn from that, yeah, that is a fantastic thing in itself. So yeah, to be honest, for that reason, I'm glad that we didn't just on board on Catalyst. It would have made my life easier, I think. Maybe your life a little bit harder. I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, listen, we've been able to take, certainly not I, but the Catalyst program has certainly been able to draw inspiration and lessons from deep funding. Like, I think, you know, in one of our early conversations when we were talking about how funds were dispersed and distributed, and you know, we talked about how funded projects just need to submit monthly reports, and so long as they're doing that, then they're receiving their monthly payments. And then, you know, as time's gone on, and as the check sizes have got larger, shall we say, it's becoming more and more important for a different type of accountability model to be, you know, underpinning the governance structure and some of the processes within Catalyst. So Catalyst has adopted a milestone-based approach, which has been piloted in Fund 9, and it was piloted with just one of the challenges, the products and integrations challenge. And for any project that was funded across any other challenge for $75,000 worth of ADA or more, they would follow this milestone-based approach. But the uniqueness here, I think, and something that I would love to see grow and develop really organically and you know, this is, I think, also speaking to sort of Door's talking points when he was asked about how do, by the swarm, like how does he imagine more controls being handed to the community in these decentralized innovation processes and programs. Well, this milestone-based funding approach requires funded projects to be able to create what we're calling a statement of milestones. And then they're setting out what their milestones are, what the evidence of achievement are, what the outputs are going to be, and a few other things. And then when it comes, and then once they've created that, it's community members that are essentially signing off on that statement of milestones. So you put your proposal in, you go through the voting process, you've been awarded the funding, then you create this statement of milestones that's a bit more true, because, you know, what you wrote 3 months ago might have changed somewhat. and then you get started with your project. And then at each point of the milestone process, once you've delivered the milestone, you come back and do a proof of achievement. And then the community again verifies whether the project has done what it said on the tin. And I think this is like a really pivotal point to lean into, that, you know, if this is all about helping to develop people's capabilities and their autonomy and their self-governance and self-determined directions around you know, how treasury funds should be spent, just making a vote and then not caring about the outcomes, I would argue is, you know, something that's not as healthy as being able to be a proposer or a reviewer or a voter, and then being really cognizant of what's being delivered once the funds are being dispersed. And then, you know, having the conviction to stand up and say, yes, this project's just achieved what they said they were going to achieve, or no, they haven't, and I require further clarifications to be comfortable that it's achieved what it said it would. And yeah, we'll see what the future holds on that. But I'm very confident that there's a great wealth of people and appetite to kind of get involved in this sort of process, particularly if it's rewarded in some way beyond, you know, just the virtue of playing a really vital role.
Yeah, yeah. So that's interesting. So here our paths are converging. I was just saying in my previous presentation, I've said it more often, that I think the single best decision that I made when we started with deep funding is to have this milestone-based disbursements. And a part of it, because it makes my life so much easier, because the teams have to come to me and I don't have to continuously chase them. But more importantly, because it keeps the communication clean. Teams can go faster, sometimes can go slower at other times for their own reasons. There can be 100 reasons. It can be technological, it can be their social environment, it can be something different. And now I don't have to worry too much about that. We'll keep track, we'll try to support them. And that's the main thing. It helps nurturing a supportive environment, because you don't have to be the policeman. But you can be the supporter of the teams. And in the end, all we want is these teams to be successful, right? So that they will in turn make Cardano successful and make SingularityNET successful. So yeah, it's interesting to see that we converge there. For me, the next step that we should do in that milestone-based thing, and I'm thinking about that already, but we need to have discussion for the community about that, is having the community also more involved in reviewing and assessing these milestones. So we started out with a small team and doing a lot of things centrally. And the benefit of that is that we can move quickly, make a lot of decisions, make a lot of changes. But over time, and we started that, we need to put more and more of these tasks and more faith and confidence in the community. And that's an interesting process in itself, but I'm sure you know all about that. We only have a couple of minutes left. So there are a lot of questions I can ask about the current or the past, or but you already mentioned what you're proud of. You already mentioned what you would have done different, being the sandbox, having an area where you can make quick changes and see what it amounts to, and then add that to the larger entity. Because in deep funding, we're small, and that's a benefit compared to Catalyst. And because of that smallness, we are also very agile. We can make hundreds of decisions in a week if we want to. But from where you are right now, if you would have a look into the future, so you started 2 years ago, you had ideals, and you were confronted with what was actually going on. Suppose that we would bring you 2 years in the future or 3 years in the future. What do you expect to see, or what do you hope to see?
Yeah, I mean, again, a really, really important question. I think, you know, succinctly, I mean, there's so many things that's on the wish list. But, you know, succinctly, if we were to sort of cast our vision out 2-3 years, we'll be 5 years into Catalyst by that point, give or take. I would expect Catalyst to be open sourced, almost, if not entirely. So that would mean that then the Catalyst protocol, the technology, is being advanced and developed by the community almost entirely. I would love to see this become a multi-asset environment. So, you know, these are deployable technologies, you know, purpose-built, that can be used by multiple ecosystems, you know, concurrently, and importantly, the deployability and auditability of you know, the voting systems that underpin, you know, decision making, are being run by as many network validators as there are in the ecosystem today. You know, I often sort of say that, you know, my vision for decentralized decision making and governance is that in the not too distant future, we'll vote on issues as much as we post photos of our lunch onto Instagram, right? Which isn't every day. You don't do that every day, but you do it fairly frequently. Well, some people do. Some people post images or whatever. They participate in this kind of action regularly, because, you know, I think over time we're becoming more comfortable and competent and aware of the tools that are at our disposal, and we're becoming more used to playing a role in voicing our opinions and having them count towards something. I think for too long, the grassroots voice of the people hasn't really been listened to, or there's difficult to make it actionable. And with things like Catalyst and sort of decentralized innovation programs and deep funding, and, you know, all of the activism that sort of takes place within our communities, hopefully that creates a ripple effect, and we can sort of see this use case being adopted by non-crypto partners that are able to sort of trailblaze in their own sorts of visions of crowdsourced innovation.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great vision. It's all recorded, so we can come back to that in time and see what really happened. Maybe just this, or maybe it will even exceed our expectations. I was seeing this comic the other day, where a parent was asking their child, or what do you want to be? And then the child said, well, I don't know, maybe lawyer or maybe doctor. What? That's so old economy. Why don't you choose a real job like TikToker or prompt engineer? And in that same sense, I can imagine that in a number of years, being active in governance ecosystems like ours will actually be a paying job. Maybe it doesn't feel like a job like we know it, but it could be a way to maintain yourself and to get an income and to feel useful for the community and to feel recognized by the community. So if we build our incentive systems the right way, so that people that have a lot of added value in our community, in the voting, and that also put their valuable time in it, are also rewarded for that. Yeah, maybe our community will look very different. Maybe not in 3 years. Let's give it 5 years. But yeah, maybe at least for some people, it might look very different than it looks today.
Maybe necessarily so as well, right?
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot positive change that we can use, indeed. All right, Kriss, I feel that we've only scratched the surface here. I'm sure of it, actually. But I also wanted to keep it high level and light and have this nice overview. Of course, there's also a lot of room by deep diving in all the nitty-gritty details of governance and of systems and etc. We do that sometimes, but also then usually we don't have enough time to dive really deep into stuff. But yeah, so we are starting this SingComDAO initiative focused on decentralization. And I hope in that context also we will be having a lot of conversations like this and go in that journey hand in hand from Catalyst and Cardano perspective and SingularityNET perspective. So thank you for being here. Thank you for talking to us. Thank you very much for always being so open and generous in your advice and in sharing your learnings. I deeply appreciate that. And I hope I can return the favor someday.
You certainly do, Jan. And thank you to you guys at SingularityNET for having such a quality event, and also a big shout out to every community member that steps up every single week to get involved in the activities, both formally and informally, on chain, off chain. Without you guys, really, as I said, these programs don't amount to much more than some good ideas.
I couldn't have said it better. Thank you.